Happy June, everyone. Welcome in. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and let's talk about the patch. Now, we got prepped last season with seeing patches be a little bit more lightly influencing the meta, and the OTAs being the big number changes as we go through little updates in the game. But there's a couple of big things I do want to talk about in this specific patch. So first off, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button down below, and let's first dive on into what we did already know coming into it. We had it announced, I want to say it was the 13th or 14th earlier in the month of May, that we were getting the series drops. So Howard, Silver Samurai, Mirage, Echo, and Martyr are dropping down to Series 3, and then your Series 4 drops, which I think are probably the way more impactful ones in my personal opinion: Jean Grey, Selene, Hercules, Nebula, Silk, Living Tribunal, and Gladiator. There are a couple of big targets for Series 4, which is still where I think is the best use of your collector's tokens more than anything else. And I'm gonna prioritize Nebula as a #1 target for your collection if you're looking for a place to use your tokens. After that, I'd probably say Gladiator, followed by a toss-up in between just your personal play style of either Silk, Living Tribunal, or Jean Grey. Jean Grey, a little bit more niche, but has some really unique, fun decks that you can do, and it's always a surprise play because it's a very underplayed card. Silk, lots of randomness, but it's also very good stats at 2/5. And then the Living Tribunal opens up its own archetype, essentially, and you can throw it into probably the #1 villain deck right now, Hela. So these are all dropping down into Series 4, but still, in my opinion, I think Nebula is the #1 target right there. As for the Series 3 drops, the two winners out of that are probably going to be Mirage and Echo. Mirage, just another alternative play for those who are utilizing their Loki decks or looking to ramp up those classic Devil Dino style decks. And Echo is slowly this sleeper card emerging as a preventative way for those ongoings, and we're seeing more and more of them coming to the game that are really going to be restricted because you have location restrictions. For example, I like keeping an eye on the middle lane more than anything else because that's a claw target as well as a Ms. Marvel target very often, two very prevalent cards. Echo helps to solve that problem. So keep an eye on those series drops that are officially live, so you might have access to those cards whether you're using your tokens for 1000 on the Series 3, which I do not recommend doing unless if you are brand new into the game and there's a very specific card that you're trying to farm, and it's probably not one of the 5 of these, but the Series 4 drops, those are probably the big ones. As great as the series drops are, the more impactful change in this patch that needs to be explained a little bit more thoroughly than what in my opinion, has been explained in the patch notes is the update to move, because they list it out in 2 different sections, both at the very top of the patch notes in just a small little blurb, and then go into a little bit more detail later on, but the detail needs to go into more detail. So let's talk about it. So Move Now prioritizes the way that the moves happen in relationship to everything else happening on those turns. So what I mean is when you take a look at a card, for example, like Nightcrawler, Cloak, all of these classic move cards, they will register as you're going in between your 2 turns. It'll register as it goes over. Once the turn then officially starts, their movement is considered complete. And this goes for other locations as well, like New York, which is probably one of the most frustrating locations for many players because they'll have something like a Devil Dinosaur. And they specifically call out Devil Dinosaur in this patch because it was a very common thing to be able to duck under that ability to be Shang-Chi'd, Enchantress, etc. Because Devil Dinosaur, when it would do a move, if you did it last, all of the other things had to happen first, and then it would register the ongoing back on. So if your opponent had played, let's say, Rogue or Enchantress down into New York, and you moved your Devil Dino into New York, if they procced first, it would not hit the Devil Dinosaur because the ongoing ability doesn't exist. That is no longer the case. Now, all of the movements happen, and movements then get resolved via reapplying the ongoing abilities and also cards like the brand new Nocturne. The location ability will now also activate at that time prior to your cards flipping. Let's say if you played other cards down in that lane afterwards. This is the biggest change because it affects Nocturne, one of the best cards of the last season, heavily, because now you can't do a location change afterwards. For example, you would have a situation where Nocturne moves in and you also play a card into the lane simultaneously. Depending on the order in which it happened, let's say it was Nowhere that it turned into, but turned into it after because Nocturne was moved second. That is no longer the case. Now Nocturne will always be registered as a move first, then the location change will happen. Let's say it turns into a Nowhere, which stops all the on reveals, and now your played down card gets flipped over, then it will be blocked because now that new location is active. This is most likely going to be affecting Nocturne in a very negative way. I would not be surprised to see Nocturne's play rate also start to go down a little bit. But the bigger nerf that happens because of this change in resolution is Phoenix Force. Phoenix Force is a huge deck, especially in upper competitive Marvel Snap. And the way that the timings of the releases of those multiple men or the Phoenix Force moved over cards from Human Torch and etc., all of that is now going to be affected based on movements resolving first, which means the multiple men moves will resolve first. Then you'll be able to do your secondary moves. So the new locations of cards and how many cards are in the lanes is also affected. Keep an eye, if you are a Phoenix Force player, keep an eye on how this deck now runs, because it is no longer as intuitive as you may have been accustomed to previously. Now with the moves resolving differently, it is going to make the entire deck play differently, and it might not be necessarily in the way that you want it to play. So keep an eye on how these moves resolve, because once moves happen, then the resolution of that move will finish and then the turn will commence. So if anything happens during the moves, like a multiple man duplicate, location change via Nocturne, reactivation of ongoings because you've slid over a Devil Dinosaur in a New York lane on turn 6, all of those will resolve, finish, then the card flips will happen. That's a huge change, and we're all going to have to get used to it. Next up are the asset re-downloads and this big bad boy, Thanos. If you want to see all of these changes live in the game, note that it is going to be a little bit of a hiccup in the process because there's a lot of changes that were happening on the back end, and it will require us to go into the game and re-download all assets, very much so re-download the entire game. Additionally, there's a lot of changes that they fixed on the back end here, and specifically the ones that will work on making the game faster and optimizing if you're playing on mobile. This is a huge important change. Do not overlook it. If you're having problems with your game, chances are you just need to completely re-download the game again and re-log in. And that's okay. It's inconvenient for one moment, but we can do this, people. We can do this. But let's talk about Thanos, because Thanos is now being more Thanos-like, if you will. They have gone to changing the stones in such a unique way that it makes Thanos a completely different deck. It's not a ramp deck anymore. It's not a let's use Thanos to figure out how to get the big cards out. It's let's use Thanos to get a really big, beefy Thanos and have Thanos do things that he has never done before, which changes how you look at him entirely. For example, the stones themselves have little adjustments coming around. First off, the Mind Stone. They are still keeping the Mind Stone at 2 cost, but now it's going to go back to exclusively pulling stones from the deck. This is how it used to be many moons ago, and then they expanded it to being 2 1-cost cards because it was almost too lean. But then simultaneously, that's exactly what you want Thanos to do. So now to give Thanos more of that Thanos feel, they're reverting it back to having it be exclusively stones that get pulled via the Mind Stone, and leaning the deck that way is something to keep an eye on when you're playing this deck or when you're constructing it. Now, most people aren't throwing in other 1-costs, but it just keeps it in line with the way that you theme the deck itself. The Reality Stone. Reality Stone is getting a very unique change because it's losing its draw a card, and they changed the verbiage on it as well. They just switched it to, instead of transform this location, it's now replace this location. Not too much necessarily in regards to that, but more so the draw a card is the big one that is now leaving the Reality Stone because they are moving it. And I understand why, because when you shuffle draw from Reality Stone to the Soul Stone, it changes how the stones have an effect on the entire game, because the draw doesn't necessarily have as much an effect on the Reality Stone, because very often you're using Reality Stone as a location cheat. That draw is irrelevant. The Soul Stone, on the other hand, though, which is getting probably one of the most significant changes, is worth talking about because they are changing it in multiple different ways. The Soul Stone now is going from its original ongoing, enemies have -1 power here, ongoing, to now an on reveal, draw a card, but then additionally, ongoing is Thanos can't be discarded or destroyed. This is big. This is a really big change because, first off, with it in the hand, they're also addressing the pig situation that happens from Spider-Ham. When you draw Thanos now, number one, it's no longer going to be in the leftmost position, it'll be in the rightmost position. That's an additional change that they've thrown into Thanos. So you can't just pig a Thanos and then ruin the entire deck. Number two, you can't discard it. So it can be targeted, but it just won't go anywhere. It'll almost like Apocalypse in that aspect, where it'll look for it, but then nothing will happen. But Apoc ramps power, this one just sits there and does absolutely nothing. And then the last piece, the destroy element, you can then, as long as Soul Stone is down as an ongoing, you can play your Thanos into those, Altar of Deaths and Death's Domains, and can't be Shang-Chi'd, bringing more value to what that 6, 10, or 20 can do in the game. And the Soul Stone is a very powerful stone now because of how it actually wants you to get Thanos out. With that said, my favorite change is the Space Stone. The Space Stone they've also changed up a bit because it is no longer next turn you can move one card to this location and draw a card. It's now an on reveal, draw a card, but the ongoing, that's right, ongoing has been added to it, that nothing can stop you from playing or moving Thanos. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Jeff the Baby Land Shark. We have Jeffnos. We have a big flexible piece now with Thanos because you no longer need to throw Vision into your Thanos deck necessarily, because you can have Thanos move around whenever you want, because you can also ramp him out differently now too. Yeah, the Time Stone. The Time Stone has also gotten a change where its on reveal was give -1 cost next turn and draw a card. Now the on reveal is just give it -1 cost. So you can play down that Time Stone whenever you want, yet alone get it to activate twice and cheapen that Thanos even further, whether it be a Grandmaster, whether it be, ramp it out with a Psylocke, as many people like to do with their 6-cost cards anyway, classically with this deck, but now gearing it towards a flexible Thanos that can't be destroyed, can't be discarded, can move wherever it wants, and can be played wherever it wants. Thanos is now one of the most flexible cards, if not the most flexible card in the game, because not only is it powerful, it's movable and safe and protected. This brings very strong emphasis, in my opinion, to reinforcing that Kyera is an important card once again for Thanos decks, as the Black Order is the season essentially was trying to do. Because now you really do need those stones. You want those stones put out there regularly because Thanos very heavily benefits from them. Simultaneously, because Thanos' stones are now more towards Thanos and less generic, they've removed the location Sanctuary 2, which used to give you a random Thanos stone. And instead, Thanos is just a really nice card that wants the stones, but you don't want the stones because it doesn't benefit you necessarily. Thanos is a really cool deck now, because now you've got the ability to counter Professor X, you've got the ability to move, all built into Thanos itself. You can still ramp out Thanos potentially even earlier with all of these other mechanics, get it down on turn 4 pretty easily nowadays. This is an exciting card, and I think the set for this card as well of getting the 20 power version of Thanos is relatively easy. Yes, they also didn't do anything. I know I didn't talk about it. They didn't do anything to the Power Stone. It's keeping exactly as is, where it gives you the +10 over on there if you've played all the stones. But all of the other stones have had small little tweaks added to them to make Thanos a very unique deck. And it's going to be different. Move Thanos is going to be a thing. You're going to start seeing Phoenix Thanos. You're going to start seeing, you know, lockdown Thanos differently with Professor X, because Thanos can play around the Professor X because it can move in that lane afterwards. Like, there's some really cool stuff that's going to happen because of Thanos. So he's now also your another solution to those Professor X decks, but he also is going to reinforce the chaos of seeing more Professor X decks. So it's a double-edged sword, but Thanos is a whole different card now with a whole different deck. Last one that I want to talk about are the features and, well, just re-highlighting the visual effects and things that they've added into the game, because the features one is one that's already being talked about in the content creator community, and I want to put my spin and take on this. It's that very first one, that collectible borders are now available in the cosmetics shop at a discount. You can also now own multiple copies at a time. So we knew in the past, and they announced it back in April, that there was going to be other ways to obtain those borders for your cards. Right now they're available, and you could go to any card at any moment, and it'll show a 500 price point for some of them in gold and 900 for others. And we've had it confirmed that they will range anywhere from the 15 to 20% discount. So in my opinion, if I'm looking at my own guessing math, I'd assume that the discount brings it to 400 and 750 when it does appear in the cosmetic shop for a little while. We also had it confirmed previously that it would be essentially a resource item that you can then say, oh look, I have a red neon border that I can apply to blank card. It will be a usable resource that you can obtain, and they're going to be able to obtain them in a variety of different ways, and this is one of them. It will randomly pop up in the shop, and you can purchase it at a reduced rate. So for the time period that it's in the shop, which is typically 8 hours, you can buy it at that reduced rate. But the new thing is you can buy unlimited amounts of them. So if you wanted to get a full red neon border deck for your destroy deck at a reduced rate, this is the way to do it, because for that 8 hours, it's incredibly cheap. So take advantage of it in that moment when it appears in your shop. But if you want to just get like 1 or maybe 2 or 3 to throw into a couple of your favorite cards, I used the example the other day of Deathlock getting it, and Carnage and Venom, and you put red borders just on those in your destroy deck. But now you saved 300 to 450 gold in the process by doing so. I'm going to call that a win. This is a good thing because it's showing more ways for people to get borders. And previously, if you got a border, like, you know, myself, I spent the gold to get borders on a couple of cards I really wanted the borders on. We knew there were going to be other opportunities to get it, and we knew from the developers publicly that more ways were going to be coming. And I've already been hearing some people talk about this is a bad thing because we already bought it, and I wish I got it cheaper. And the devs have even come back to us and said, do you get upset when one of your favorite items goes on sale? That's exactly what's happening. We offer it randomly to you on sale. And I think that's important to recognize too, because we're going to start seeing public outcry of, oh, but I bought this border, I want compensation. And I don't think that's the way to look at it. If anything, they've just made it more approachable for more people to gain access to customizing their collection the way that Second Dinner and the community wants to. We want to have the cool shiny things, and we want to have them for cheaper. We've just previously paid to have it earlier. We've never gotten more competitive via the pay. We've just gotten the things sooner. So that's where we are. Sooner is now over, and we are now at later, which means it is going to be open and available in more outlets, and this is going to be one of them. This is a really, really good thing for the game because we want more people investing resources that they may have stockpiled, or, you know, flipping that switch by saying, oh man, the green border is there and I love my Loki deck. Should I get the neon green border? Oh, it's cheaper right now. Okay, you know what? And then they feel good about it. Like that's the kind of stuff we want. We want people building these cool, unique, awesome decks and enjoying the game further for cheaper. This is what that is. So we should be celebrating this fact, and this is a very good thing in my opinion for Marvel Snap. I'm happy to see that they are now offering more ways for us to get these borders, and potentially new borders in the process coming via that way. Exclusive borders coming via that way. That's exciting to see. I'm curious if we'll start getting some of those crackle ones that we've seen the data mines on, and they put some of the photos out publicly of like the black crackly sparkly style borders. Maybe that's how we start getting those at a discounted rate because they only appear there. I don't know, but either way, I think this is a very good thing. They removed the collection level cap for the 4 people who were worried about that. And the performance improvements, as we talked about, make sure you're fully re-downloading the game entirely on mobile. Then you should have a much better play experience. And they've added in a couple of VFX for Ebony Blades Black Knight, which I'm curious to see because I think that's just a really cool deck in general. Beast getting an additional one, bring more excitement to the bounce deck. That's cool. Updating the VFX for Space Stone and the Soul Stone because of the Thanos changes makes total sense. And I'm just going to read this one, and I quote, "After being made aware of issues around the Gambit variant in the Dealing with Demons bundle, we're swapping out the X97 #1 Tyler Kirkham Gambit variant. We greatly appreciate those who brought this to our attention and will continue to improve on improving our processes to ensure issues like these are few and far between." This is, in my opinion, only the second time we've seen an issue with a variant come to the game in any potential way. I remember there was one, y'all help me out in the comments down below, where we had the background was taken from another artist, but this was for a different game. It was really bizarre. And I remember it was all over X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And it was a big deal. And art is a very controversial topic because of how much people own that on their own property there. But in this particular conversation, this had nothing to do with that. This had more so to do with the connection to the comic book, statements, phrasing, and content included from the very specific variant comic of that issuing. And with that, in a combination with some public statements, I'm glad that they're rotating it out. Long story short, you'll get a straight swap for a brand new variant. If you'd like to look further into this, I highly recommend taking a look at some of the information that is available on Reddit. Just get ready for the cesspool in the process. That's it. That is the June 4th patch. Re-download the game, enjoy the new assets as they come on in, and get ready to see, especially all over the internet, there's probably some really exciting data mines that will come in simultaneously. Cool things are happening right now. Thanos is back, but in a way that we didn't necessarily prepare for. So there's going to be a lot of testing around the new Thanos deck. Move, be aware of it. If you're a Phoenix Force player, I'm sorry, you have a whole new deck to learn how to navigate simultaneously. And the game is getting improvements. Yes, I know this was not a huge, mega OTA, cost up, power down, style change, but this is just an overall well-rounded change because it gives emphasis to the namesake card of the game, Thanos, getting what he really needs, which is reinforcement of having the stones work for him, and they're making the game a better play experience by changing things in the background as we get ready for an absolutely chaotically filled and exciting June. If you want to learn more about what's coming on down the pipeline here with Marvel Snap, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below because a lot of cool things are coming this month. Stay tuned. We will talk about it as it all unfolds here on the channel. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and I look forward to seeing y'all next time.